welcome to the Mother's Day special episode of the Experimental Parent, where we will be addressing some of the most common questions that our friends ask us about pregnancy, labor, and the fourth trimester. So first of all, a big shout out to all the mummies out there on this special day, Mother's Day, honoring your dedication and love as a mother. One of my favorite quotes about mothers is that the loveliest masterpiece of the heart of God is the heart of a mother. And whether you're an aspiring mother to be, a new mother, or a seasoned mother, let us all remind ourselves that there is no way to be a perfect mother and a million ways to be a good one. So please rest in the knowledge that every single moment we are doing our best for our children, and that's all that really matters. And we ought to give ourselves a big pat and celebrate ourselves for being able to do that, for having the courage, the grit, the determination, and the undying love to wake up every day and do that for our children. So my husband and I were actually one of the first in our social circles to become parents, to get married and to become parents. And over the years, we've had countless conversations with our friends who later on also went in the footsteps of marriage and parenting about what pregnancy was like, the labor process, and how to get through really the toughest initial months postpartum, and many would call it the fourth trimester. And so we decided to consolidate all of that information in most of the common things that we get asked about this stage in our lives, and put them together in an episode so that more people can access it. I must also highlight that whatever I'm going to share is just based on my own experience, how I went through it and how I cope with the various challenges, and it's by no means the template or the only answer to these questions. There are many mummies out there who experienced it a different way and who have a lot more to share, and I hope also one day to be able to tap on that wealth of knowledge to share more diverse views from more mummies. But for now, this is just a documentation of my own experiences and how I dealt with the challenges. I also wanted to do this for my friends. So there are quite a good number of my friends who have lately either expecting a baby or who have just recently given birth to a new baby and have just become first-time mummies. So I am very excited for them. So this episode is actually also really dedicated to all of them, new mummies and expectant mummies to be. And so first of all, big congratulations to all my mummy friends, my new mummy friends, for the little bundles of joy that you have delivered or whom you are expecting now. And I hope that this episode will really help you. I have mentioned before in one of my earlier episodes that I was almost quite obsessed with the whole pregnancy journey because of how amazing I thought this whole process was. You know, it's really truly the miracle of life embodied in pregnancy and birth. So as early as I found out I was expecting, I went to read up, really on the week-on-week milestones and how baby is developing. The fetal development of it was enough to keep me so occupied for hours on end, just wanting to find out how is it that this cells, just come together and they start to form something in my likeness, and it's growing in me. And as early as the first 4 weeks, begins to develop a beating heart and becomes so human-like over the months, and eventually when I can finally see him or her face to face. So all of that really, even when I talk about it, it still amazes me. So somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks is usually the time that mummies discover that they are pregnant, and by this time the embryo has already developed into what is known as a fetus, and at this time also a heartbeat is detectable. And as the pregnancy progresses towards the end of the first trimester, as the organs develop, the features also start developing and baby starts to look more and more human-like. The organs and tissues are developing very rapidly at this stage, and the gender of the baby is also starting to become more and more apparent as it starts developing. So for parents who decide not to go for a non-invasive prenatal testing, from ultrasound at about 20 weeks, that's about 5 months thereabout, the gynae should be able to ascertain the gender of the child from examining the genitals from ultrasound. For both our children, my husband and I opted for an NIPT, so a non-invasive prenatal testing. And so what they do is they draw blood from the mummy, and from the mother's blood they are able to actually detect the chromosomes, the sex chromosomes of the baby, because the sex chromosomes also pass into the maternal blood. So they're able to actually pinpoint quite accurately up to about 99% what is the gender of the baby. As you progress well into your second trimester, that's the part where baby's growth accelerates. So it's rapid development of baby's organs and fats and hair, all of that start to develop at this stage. And somewhere around 5 months, baby is able to swallow and also urinate. So they're actually taking in the amniotic fluid and also releasing it, right, by urinating. And somewhere between 25 to 28 weeks, baby's eyes are starting to open and close. So they're becoming more and more human-like, and really just like feeling like you have a baby growing in you now, rather than really just an egg, an embryo or a fetus-like thing. And it is also at this stage that baby can respond to sound and light. So when you are talking and when you're on the go, and there are a lot of activities going on in the daytime, you can also feel baby stirring and responding to it. Or if you shine a light, you can try that. A lot of excited first-time mummies would like to try that, or even put headphones on and play music and see how baby stirs and moves to the music. By the time you enter your third trimester, baby should be gaining weight and also fat, and also the brain continues to develop. And a couple of more weeks down into your third trimester, between weeks 33 to 36, baby is pretty much actually fully formed already. Although for organs like the lungs, they continue to develop even through birth, right, and the first few months after birth. Also, when you enter your third trimester, baby actually starts to move into the delivery position, and they start to get engaged into your pelvis. So baby will be stirring and still pretty much moving about somewhere into your third trimester, but you should feel as you get bigger and nearer to the EDD that the movement slows down a little bit. Once baby's head is engaged in the pelvis, he or she is ready in the birth position, and he or she shouldn't be moving so much anymore. So what are some things you can do during pregnancy to make this process as joyful and as healthy as possible? Is to, of course, keep up with good nutrition. I don't think, at least for me, I don't think there's a need to be extremely strict on your diet, and there's also no need to eat like double portions or triple portions, because everybody just say, oh, you are eating for another baby now, you're eating for two now. But actually, really, that's a myth. Mothers don't actually have to eat double the portions because their babies are also eating it. Babies can actually absorb sufficient from mummy's normal intake. So that increase in consumption or the increase in hunger is more because of the energy that is required by the body to grow baby, more than because baby really needs to eat another portion of food. So during pregnancy, your gynae will probably also advise in the earlier stages of pregnancy to keep your movements light, to not engage in heavy duty exercises. And throughout pregnancy also, while exercise is important and you should continue to stay mobile and active, to not engage in any strenuous exercise. So for me, I took to swimming because that's the only time in my pregnancy that I feel light, and then I can really feel the weight being lifted off me, and the pressure. So I really enjoyed swimming. And while I was pregnant with my firstborn, I swam every week, diligently every week, unless Cat 1, right? All the way up till the week before I gave birth. So I gave birth at 39 weeks and 5 days. So all the way up to the last weekend before I gave birth, I was swimming. So I recall the lifeguard, right, who was an uncle, was just watching me every week, you know, waddling to the pool. And every week he'll tell me, Mei, careful, don't walk so fast. Every week he was just watching my belly grow and grow. And I think every weekend when he's on duty, he's always like so in trepidation, right? Like, this is maybe still showing up at the pool and still waddling away towards the pool. But I really enjoyed it, and it did help a lot in alleviating the muscle aches and helping with the blood circulation. And also I would like to think that it helped with labor, because all that movement and its swimming helped baby to get into a great position for birth. And because I was keeping active and mobile all the way up till labor, the labor was relatively smooth. So hubbies, all do encourage your wives to exercise lightly. You can also do so by walking with her. So after dinner, you know, you can take a walk around the park in your estate. Just go on light walks, about 15-20 minutes, and do give her a good massage when she comes back home. When it comes to massage, you do want to be careful though. So while it's okay to massage, you know, the calf areas, you do want to avoid, I think, the ankles, because there are acupoints over there. If you press too hard, they actually can induce labor. So that's the last thing you want, right? So I think anywhere on the calves is safe, and just helping to lift mummy's legs up and to keep her feet in the pointed position like that for better blood circulation. Yeah, don't point them down, don't point with your toes down, because that will likely lead to cramps. Somewhere when you are into your 6th month, you can also start looking at confinement ladies if you do not have a confinement arrangement already made for you within your family. Confinement nannies can be engaged from agencies locally, or if you have your own recommendations from friends or family and they know someone, they can do that. And the processing is relatively fast free. You can do that on MOM's website. You also want to book your prepartum and postpartum massage if this is something that you think you will benefit from. So prepartum massage is to help you alleviate the pain around your hip and your waist area as your baby grows and the baby gets heavier and all that weight is pulling down on you. And these professionals know how to do so without touching the acupoints, which may induce labor. So you can consider prepartum massage. For me, I engaged prepartum massage for my firstborn, but for my second, I didn't. And I did have postpartum massage both for my firstborn and my secondborn. Somewhere around your 5th month, you can also start applying stretch mark cream. I use Earth Mama, and I apply them like generously around my belly area, and even the thighs, the inner thighs area, well into baby's birth and after. So postpartum, I still continue to apply because, you know, like just after the skin has been stretched and it, you know, for a while it needs to regain its elasticity to go back into shape without having the marks, you know, of being stretched. So for our firstborn, because it was our first baby and we were the first in our circle to enter pregnancy, we were quite lost. So we booked ourselves an antenatal class, and that was very helpful in preparing us for birth. Especially for me, I was pretty apprehensive about it because I didn't know what to expect. I don't know what my pain threshold was going to be like. I had a lot of questions about what exactly is going on inside while I'm having contractions. How must that feel like? So many questions. And I was very glad that my husband signed us up for antenatal class because almost all my questions were answered there, except for the bit where I had to experience it for myself, of course. So also in the 3rd trimester nearing birth, I as advised by the antenatal instructor, started doing perineal massage. So the perineum is the skin between the vagina and the anus. So there's a thin skin over there, and that skin is going to be stretched max, and it will almost tear into the perineum when you give birth if you're doing a normal vaginal delivery. So when baby is coming through, it will most likely tear the perineum, and of course it depends on how to what degree the tear is. For some mummies, unfortunately the tears extend all the way up to the anus, and the stitching and postpartum recovery can be painful. So what can help is by doing perineum massage, and it is, you know, just kind of like stretching the perineum, really just using your fingers, 2 fingers, and just stretching it every day, you know, during bath time over warm water, or you can just use a perennial balm, which is moisturizing and it's lubricating as well, to just kind of stretch the perineum so that the skin in the area would be elastic and stretchable enough during birth, and that will also help the recovery of the tear from at the perineum postpartum. So I don't know to what extent that helped me, but I just did it anyways, and I just thought that was like a preventive measure. And as much as I had the episiotomies done for both my babies, the wounds recovered in due time, and I would like to think that the perineum massage did help. Okay, so I talked about how I was so apprehensive about birth, and I just really like I don't like to deal with ambiguity, so not knowing what to expect was making me very anxious about the whole process. So I looked to vlogs and YouTube videos of people who documented their birth process, and I try to find more positive ones so that I can, you know, be positive like them, and get a realistic idea of what the whole birth process was going to be like, because it's really very hard to describe it until you go through it yourself, right? But those videos did help me to anticipate what are the kind of the things that I will feel, you know, and what would the process admission be like, and how long into it can I expect before I give birth to my baby. And in the last few weeks, I was very actively on the birth ball. So while I was working from home, or while I was watching TV or whatnot, I always try to be on the birth ball, and I will just, you know, do like move my hips around and stretch my legs and perineum, all just helping baby to get engaged in that position and get ready for birth. Because as you know, that whole birth process, baby needs to do a lot of moving around and figuring out, you know, because it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle almost, finding the right shape that can fit, right? So the pelvic bones are also moving throughout birth as they enter the birth canal. As baby gets engaged and go through it, baby's head needs to keep on maneuvering and trying to find what is that shape that can match, and baby can make that way through a very, very narrow canal that is the birth canal. Okay, so that's a little bit about prenatal care and the fetal development already. And now I'm going into the labor part of it. So I think a lot of other mummies can also try to describe it as best as possible, but the experience differs from mummy to mummy, and also from pregnancy to pregnancy. So for my firstborn at 39 weeks and 5 days, I was actually going to be induced already if baby hadn't come out by the time he had reached 40 weeks. So I recall he was born on a Friday, and on the Monday before that, when I went for my final gynae check, I recall my gynae telling me that, okay, you have 1 week left before you reach full gestation at 40 weeks, and if baby still doesn't come out naturally, we will have to induce labor. So the EDD was on that Sunday. So by Saturday night, if he's still not out, you can check yourself into the hospital, and by Sunday morning we will deliver baby, because past 40 weeks, past 41 weeks, it's not so optimal for baby to be in the womb anymore, because the amniotic fluid almost depletes. You know, it's not much amniotic fluid left, and the womb is no longer conducive to host to house baby past 41 weeks. So I remember feeling very scared when my gynae said that, because I just always felt that I always imagined myself, you know, walking around the shopping mall, and the more relaxed and the least I expect it, then when the contractions come, the lesser I will feel anxious and scared about the whole onset of contractions. But if I were to be induced, I just imagine myself in such a clinical setting, and I almost already know and can anticipate when I would start to feel the pain once they inject the oxytocin and do the necessary, right? So I was quite averse to being induced, and every day I prayed, and I would be on the birth ward and talking to my baby and say, baby, you still don't come out, doctor had to induce me already, you know, can you please come out? So I think my prayers were answered. God answered my prayers. Baby was cooperative. And on the Friday before, so Saturday night I was due to go in already, right? So thankfully on Friday morning, early morning, I suddenly woke up to like a sensation of a lot of water just suddenly like splashing out of me, right? Like gushing out. And I just knew that this was no ordinary urinal incontinence or any ordinary discharge. This was my water breaking. So somewhere at like 5 something, my water broke. And with that splashing sensation, I just knew. And it doesn't stop, right? It doesn't just like psh, and then it stops. It's like continuously like leaking water. So I got up, like I just sat bolt upright, and then my husband got scared, right? Like, what happened? And I said, my water broke. And I just stood up and made my way to the bathroom, and I was still like leaking water on the way there. And I was leaking water all the way until I got to the toilet. And I just very calmly, changed myself, put on a sanitary pad, changed myself, cleaned myself up. And in the meantime, my husband was helping me to like clean up after all the water. And I noticed that because I read from all that literature, right, that when the water breaks, the water is supposed to be clear. So I remember very vividly that when my water broke, it wasn't clear. It was a bit yellowish, dark yellowish. So I decided to call my gynae. So by the time it was already around like 6 a.m. in the morning, and my gynae said, okay, you come into the hospital immediately. So we went in, and at that time I still didn't feel very apparent contractions. In fact, I was still like eating my malai gao breakfast in the car, and I just remember still like talking to my husband about, like, I was so talkative. I was like going on and on about everything, what we need to do, and what needs to be taken care of at home and so on. And it was only when I reached the hospital that I started to feel mild contractions, but they were still bearable. And I was 2 cm dilated when I reached the hospital. So I got changed, and then they put me on the bed, and then they put all the fetal heart rate monitors on, and I was still setting up the TV, because I recall telling my husband that, hey, I need something to distract myself, and I foresee the labor is going to be very long, right? It's going to take a long time, so I better set my TV up, set my Running Man up, and prepare all my prayer books and everything, and just make myself comfortable. So at that time, I still wasn't feeling very active contractions. I was still in the very early stages of labor. And then maybe some 40 minutes down into admission, I began feeling stronger contractions, and they were starting to get more and more frequent. And I was told, because of that the water was like yellowish, so it was likely that baby might have pooped inside. And because of that, we need to accelerate the labor. So I was given an oxytocin jab, and that sped up the contractions quite significantly. So by the time I was about 5 cm, the contractions were very regular and very rapid and quite intense. So I called for epidural, and after the epidural was administered, I could see my husband was reading the charts, and he was like, and he was telling me, wow, you're having very heavy very strong contractions now. And I could feel the contractions. I could feel like that squeezing sensation, but it wasn't painful. It wasn't like that. Okay, so a lot of mummies ask, like, how do contractions actually feel like, right? And I don't know whether my description is accurate, so other mummies might describe it another way, but it feels like you're having a stomach ache and you really need to like poop, like that pressure in your rectal area is very strong. You need to poop, but that squeezing sensation is like very intense period cramps, and the period cramps are like so painful, coupled with that sensation that you need to poop. Make sense? So that was how I felt. So with the epidural on, I was feeling the contractions, but less the period cramp, the intense, very, very intense period cramp sensation. So by about 11 something, my contractions were progressing quite well, and my dilation was also progressing quite well. I was 7 to 8 cm dilated, and they called up the gynae, and the gynae probably said, oh, okay, it's probably still going to be a while more. So I called up my family members. My parents I still remember they were at Amoy Street. They were having lunch, so when they got the call, then they were going to finish lunch, and then they were going to come over and wait it out. I mean, they were probably expecting me to not give birth so soon, so they were still like, okay, let me just finish up whatever we have to do, and then when we get the call that baby is out, then we will make our way there. But who knew that the dilations progressed quite rapidly after that, and I was fully dilated by 12. So the gynae came in and checked my cervix, and he said, oh, I actually can feel baby's head already. Okay, let's set everything up. So they just quickly set everything up, and it was go time. So I recall the nurses, telling me to take deep breaths and push, and I recall them also applying fundal pressure. The fundal pressure is when the trained medical professionals or the midwives on either sides will push the baby and aid the baby downward. And I remember my gynae telling the nurses, because baby had pooped inside, so it was quite urgent for him to come out as soon as possible. So he was kind of like expediting the delivery using the fundal pressure. And halfway down, I recall faintly that he said he asked to bring him the vacuum, because baby's heart rate was dropping. And that was because his umbilical cord has coiled around his neck. So they got the vacuum, and one big push and the vacuum, and baby came out. And he came out like, wow, bigger than I imagined him to be. He came out at 3.6 kg and so blue, I think also because of that situation of the umbilical cord coiling around him. And he didn't cry immediately. They brought him to, of course, the bed, right, where they weighed him, and then they had to kind of get the fluids out, and then he cried. And I heaved a huge sigh of relief, and I imagined always this birth moment to be like, oh, this beautiful part where I look at my baby. But as a matter of fact, the reality is no, it wasn't like that. Because for one, I had a mild side effect from epidural, so I was shivering, and shivering is a known side effect of epidural. So I couldn't control my shivers, and I was so emotional because my baby was born, and I just felt like this whole wave of emotions overcome me, of being so in awe of what I just delivered, and in awe of meeting my baby for the first time, but also the shivers from the epidural. So I was like tearing, and from the corner of my eye I was watching baby, being cleaned up and all over there, and I was like, he's so beautiful. So I was like, through shivers and tears, I was saying those words. So my labor was relatively short for a first baby, apparently. So from the time my water broke at 5 a.m. till afternoon 12 o'clock when I gave birth to my baby, and it was considered relatively smooth without much complications. But because of the urgency of his birth, with him pooping inside, and also the umbilical cord coiling around his neck, I think because of that, there was a lot of pressure getting him out, and hence my wounds at the episiotomy took a longer time to heal as compared to my second born. So my second born's birth story was just like, wow, it's so smooth. For him, my water didn't break all the way until it was time for him to go. So that actually is the optimal state, because the water bag is, think of it as like the protective balloon that is still keeping the bacteria and whatnots away from baby, right? Between the womb and the vagina, the water bag there is that last layer of protection. So that water bag there is not supposed to break until the very moment that baby begins his journey down the birth canal. So for my second born, that was the case. His water bag was intact all the way until it was time for me to push. And for him, it was a very different experience, because I felt contractions first, and my water didn't break. So I was still expecting the whole water bag experience to happen again, but it didn't. So for him, I was pregnant with him all the way until 38 weeks and 3 days, when the night before, we had just celebrated my birthday, and we had a very hearty dinner, my husband and I, hearty seafood dinner. I was so happy, and went back home, and then I thought I felt indigestion, and I felt like, indigestion coupled with I ate something wrong, I felt the need to go toilet. So I went to, poop and empty my bowels. And by the way, labor also, the hormones released in labor also help to loosen, helps to makes the cervix dilate, right, for birth. And that also actually causes looser stools, right? So you feel like more frequent bowel movement and looser stools, and that's a natural kind of reaction also. So I needed to go, and I went. I emptied my bowels, and I thought that okay, I can go back to sleep. But then a couple of minutes later, like I felt the like the urge to go toilet again and pain. So I'm like, haven't I emptied my stomach already? Did I really eat until so much that I haven't released everything in one go? So I tried to go toilet again, and I couldn't. So this went on between like 3 a.m. plus all the way till 5 a.m. So I don't know why, for some reason I didn't entertain the thought that I might be in labor. Maybe because I just imagined for my firstborn it was only in 39 weeks plus that I was due, so I just didn't think that he was already ready for my second one, already ready at 38 weeks and 3 days. So by 5 a.m. and after going back and forth the toilet and feeling this pain, I decided that I might be in labor. I mean, I came to terms with it that I might be in labor, and I started to count. So I monitored, and true enough, the contractions came about every 5 minutes or so, and they lasted about 1 minute. So that's when I knew I was in labor, right? Early labor. And that's when I told my husband, I think I'm in labor, and the contractions were very intense. So I could hardly talk to him while when the contractions came. So okay, activated, right? So we grabbed our hospital bag, our luggages, and off we went. But this time, no malaikau in the car. No way I could consume anything. I was just holding on to the handrail so tightly every time the contractions came, and it was so bad, so bad. I was like barely holding it in. And so my husband dropped me. I still remember he dropped me at the driveway first, and I like literally crawled out of the car. And I remember the security guard there was asking me, oh, do you need a wheelchair? Can I get you a wheelchair? And I remember telling him, it's okay, I don't think a wheelchair is going to help me with this. It's better if I walk, right? And so when the contractions wore off for that brief 1 or 2 minutes, I went back to my normal state, and I went out and said, okay, I think I'm in labor. And they said, okay, let me escort you up. And then next minute I was like, oh, again at it, right? So they're like, oh my goodness, what do I do with this lady? One moment she's in pain, one moment she's not, and she doesn't want to sit in the wheelchair. So I was escorted up to the delivery suite, where I informed the nurses I was in labor, and they prepared me and everything. And then they told me that you're already 4 cm dilated. So by the time I reached hospital, I was 4 cm dilated. And so I immediately called for epidural. And after epidural was administered, I again, same thing. So I felt the intensity of the contractions, but not so much of the period cramp pain thing anymore. So by that time, it was also 6 something in the morning. My babies just like to do these kind of early morning drills on me, and both on Fridays. So so that was me by about 6 a.m. I was in there, and I still remember having to inform our friends that we got to cancel plans for that day because I think I'm in labor already. Yeah, so the same thing, preparing myself for it. And this second baby's labor was also relatively fast because the nurses came in, and my gynae came in and checked and said, oh, okay, your dilations are progressing quite quickly. And before I knew it, by about 9 o'clock, or like maybe 8:50, 9 o'clock thereabout in the morning, I was fully dilated. And when my gynae checked the dilation, at that same moment she felt my water break. And so like perfect timing, baby was ready to make his journey down. And with him, because there was no urgency, right, there wasn't like no poo-poo inside the amniotic fluid, or he didn't coil himself in the umbilical cord and whatnot. So he was allowed to really, I was allowed to like push a few more times and really let him come out, make his way out. And my gynae was gently massaging and nudging him out as naturally as possible. So no vacuum was needed for him. And so by about 9:30, my second baby was born. So this time the episiotomy wound was shorter, smaller, and they healed up faster. In about 2 weeks or so, I think I was already fully healed from the wound. So when it comes to labor, of course, in the Singapore hospital setting, we would be propped up on the bed, with our legs up and so on. Ideally, baby should be in what they call an anterior position, where baby's face is actually facing mommy's spine. right? The other way, the posterior position would be baby's face was facing up, facing the belly, mommy's belly. That position would make it a little bit harder for baby to come out. Maybe mainly because I think in our back, we have a tailbone, and it's kind of like a flap almost, right? When a baby and the features with the nose and whatnot, it's easier for them to maneuver around that position and easier for baby to like slip out. So they change that position as they go down the birth canal. Yeah, so they're coming down and then they turn and they turn, and before they make that last turn and they come out with their face facing the spine. So yeah, that is labor and delivery.